I never expected to see the inside of the Vatican. Men like me did not belong here. I was a soldier once, then nothing more than a name scratched onto discharge papers. When the war ended, so did I. I carried scars no metal could cover and silence no one wanted to hear. That was when Father Matthias found me. He had been my friend long before the uniform, a parish priest with hands worn from years of turning pages and burying the dead. He came to me one evening while the sun sank low and painted the church windows red. "Aaron Beckett," he said, his voice carrying both warmth and warning. "There is work for you in Rome." I almost laughed. Rome was for saints and scholars, not broken soldiers. But he did not laugh with me. He set a small bundle on the table between us. Inside lay a dagger. Its blade was narrow, etched with symbols I could not read, its hilt bound in leather darkened by age. "What is this?" I asked. "A relic," he whispered. "A weapon older than the walls of this church. You must keep it hidden, even from the men who will hire you." I stared at him, waiting for the jest, but none came. He pressed a folded paper into my hand. On it were words in Latin, a prayer I recognized only in fragments. "Learn these," he said. "Say them until they are carved into your bones. One day you may have no other shield." I frowned. "You speak as if I am walking into hell." Matthias met my eyes, his face lined by candlelight. "The Vatican is not hell, but it has corridors that lead close enough." Weeks later, I stood at the gates of the Vatican, a badge of employment pinned to my chest. They called us guardians of the archives. That was the phrase repeated with pride. Protectors of history, defenders of sacred knowledge. But the archives I guarded were not shelves of books or stacks of crumbling letters. They were doors, heavy, locked, sealed with more chains than sense. Behind each one, they told me, lay manuscripts too fragile for the world above. It was quiet work, too quiet. At night, as we patrolled the long halls, I heard things the others pretended not to notice. A low sound, like a goat's bleating cry, stretched and thin, drifting through the stone. It was never loud, but it was always close. When I asked the men beside me, they shook their heads. Old pipes, wind in the walls. But their eyes betrayed them. They heard it too. One evening, while I traced my patrol along the lowest corridor, I passed a door I had never seen open. It was marked not with saints, but with a sigil burned deep into the wood, two horns curling inward, meeting above a single eye. As I paused, the air thickened, sour, as though something inside pressed against the wood. My fingers brushed the relic dagger beneath my jacket, though I had never drawn it. The prayer Matthias taught me rose unbidden to my lips. I whispered the first words, and the air lightened. The door remained closed, but I walked faster after that. Life in the Vatican became a rhythm. Patrol, silence, unease. The men beside me were not soldiers. They were watchmen, men of paychecks and empty stares. Few asked questions. None wanted answers. Yet I could not forget Matthias's words, nor the relic dagger heavy against my side. One night, as I sat in my quarters, I unfolded the prayer again. My Latin was broken, my tongue clumsy, but I repeated the words until my voice shook. The candlelight flickered, though no wind touched it. Something in the stone seemed to listen. The next day, whispers spread among the guards. A shipment had arrived under cover of dawn, not relics, not manuscripts, crates, heavy, unmarked, wheeled into the forbidden corridors, under escort by men in lab coats and black suits. We were told nothing. But as the elevator doors closed behind them, I caught a glimpse. Inside one of the crates, through a slat of wood, I saw something pale and curved. Bone, a horn. That night, the bleeding returned. Louder now, closer. I could not sleep. I sat awake with the relic dagger across my knees, whispering Matthias's prayer until my throat ached. The others laughed at me when I walked the halls alone, muttering in a language I barely knew. They did not understand, but I felt it. Whatever lay beneath the Vatican was stirring, and I was beginning to believe that my job was never to guard history. It was to guard a secret that should never have been written, let alone reborn. The nights grew heavier. The air in the Vatican corridors thickened until every breath felt like swallowing dust. The guards moved slower, their eyes dulled by silence. But the silence was never true. Beneath it, I always heard that same sound, a bleating cry, faint and stretched thin through the stone. A goat's cry, restless, waiting. One evening, as I finished my patrol, the order came. All guards were to clear the lowest hall. No reason given, no questions allowed. We obeyed, but I lingered at the stairwell. From the shadows, I watched. Men in lab coats appeared first, pushing carts stacked with machines that hummed low, their red lights blinking like eyes in the dark. Behind them came priests in crimson robes, their faces shadowed by hoods. Together they moved like one body, carrying cables, metal cases, sealed crates marked with nothing but numbers. At the end of the procession rolled a massive container, long as a coffin but wider, its sides braced with iron bands. It took 6 men to move it. Every step echoed like a drum beat. I pressed back into the shadows, clutching the dagger Matthias had given me. My pulse hammered, though I dared not breathe. As the container passed, the air shifted. A smell rose, sharp and foul, like wet fur burned on coal. My throat closed. Then came the sound. Not from the men, not from the wheels of the cart, from inside the container. A low, drawn-out cry, goat-like, clearer than I had ever heard before. The men did not flinch. They pushed it forward as if deaf, as if the sound belonged to them. The cry dragged across the stone walls, echoing long after they were gone. When the corridor emptied, I followed, silent as I could. My boots touched each step with care, though the weight in my chest threatened to give me away. The procession led to a gate I had never seen open. 2 Swiss guards stood before it, their halberds crossed. The priests whispered, presenting a key bound in black cloth. The gate creaked wide, revealing an elevator caged in iron. The machines, the crates, the coffin-shaped container, all were loaded inside. The gate closed. The elevator descended, down, deeper than the foundations of Rome. I stayed hidden until the last echo of chains faded. Only then did I retreat, my palms slick with sweat. Back in the guard room, the others spoke in hushed voices. "Americans," one muttered, "always bringing their toys." Another spat on the floor. "They say it is to preserve relics, but since when does relics need wires and machines?" I asked nothing, but their eyes turned to me anyway. One leaned close, whispering so the others would not hear. "You are Beckett, right? Aaron Beckett, the new one. You should learn quickly. The less you see, the longer you breathe." He leaned back, silence wrapping his words. That night, the bleeding came again, louder. No longer faint through stone, it drifted through the corridors like breath on the back of my neck. I rose from my bed and walked the halls alone. My hand never left the dagger beneath my jacket. The words of Matthias's prayer whispered from my lips, unsteady, breaking, but still spoken. The air moved around me, heavy with a stench I could not name. At the far end of the corridor, a door rattled against its chains. I froze. The cry came again, drawn out, almost mocking. A goat's voice, but twisted, stretched with hunger. The chains stilled. The silence pressed back in. I hurried away, my pulse shaking my body, but the sound followed. In every echo of my steps, I heard it again. The next day, orders changed. Our patrols were rerouted. Whole wings of the lower halls were locked to us, sealed by keys we would never touch. When I asked the captain why, he only said, "Security. Do not ask." His eyes betrayed him. He was afraid. Later, while crossing the courtyard above, I saw them again. Scientists and priests moving in pairs, speaking in tones too low to catch. They carried cases sealed with wax. One man dropped his by mistake. The case cracked open. I saw inside a skull, yellowed with age, its horns curled and long. Not an animal's skull. Something larger, something human and beast at once. The man snapped the case shut. His eyes met mine. For a moment, we both froze. Then he smiled, thin and knowing, before hurrying away. That night, the goat's cry grew bolder, not faint, not distant. It echoed sharp through the stone, carrying laughter hidden in its pitch. I lay awake, dagger across my chest, whispering Matthias's prayer until my throat burned. The candlelight flickered, bending low as though the flame itself bowed to something greater. And in the silence that followed, I swore I heard words beneath the bleeding, not speech, not language, but intent. Something beneath the Vatican was waking, and it knew my name. The order came at midnight. Half the guard detail was reassigned, the rest dismissed early. It was unusual, but no one complained. Fewer hours meant fewer chances to hear the goat's cry. I should have gone to my quarters. I should have kept my head down. But the air felt different that night, charged with a weight I could not ignore. My instincts from years in uniform whispered that something was happening below. I followed the sound of wheels on stone. Down the corridor, past the chained doors, I saw them again. Priests in crimson robes and men in lab coats pushing heavy carts. Machines clicked and hummed, cables coiled like snakes. At the rear rolled another container, taller this time, its sides reinforced with steel. They stopped at a door marked only with a black sigil, two horns curling inward around a hollow circle. I had seen that mark before, burned into the wood of a forbidden chamber. Keys turned, chains fell, the door opened. I pressed back into the shadows and slipped inside before the gate closed. The air changed at once, warm, heavy, metallic. A passage stretched downward, carved into the rock itself. Lights buzzed overhead, sterile and white, too bright for stone this old. At the bottom waited a chamber I could scarcely believe belonged beneath the Vatican. It was a laboratory. Glass walls divided the room into sections. Tables lined with instruments gleamed under fluorescent light. Computers hummed, their screens pulsing with data. Priests moved among the scientists as if they belonged, murmuring prayers while men adjusted wires and valves. And in the center stood a cylinder, taller than any man, clear, filled with liquid thick as oil. Tubes ran from its base into the walls. The hum of machinery grew louder near it, as if every device in the chamber served this one thing. Something floated inside. At first, I thought it was a carcass, half decayed. Pale skin stretched over bone, ribs like blades pressing outward. But as the light shifted, I saw it move. A tremor along its chest, a flex in its hand, its head tilted. Two horns curled from its skull, black and ridged. Its face was not goat, not human, but a fusion of both, twisted, incomplete. Its eyes were closed, lids heavy, but even in sleep they seemed aware. My breath caught, my hand gripped the relic dagger at my side. Dr. Victor Harlan stood near the cylinder, his lab coat spotless, his voice calm as he addressed the priests. The subject responds to stimuli. Neural patterns are active. "We are close," one priest asked. "And its will? Can it be bound?" Harlan smiled faintly. "With the device we have built, yes. Thought itself can be shackled. Soon it will obey as any soldier obeys his command." The priest crossed himself, not in prayer, but in relief. I felt my stomach twist. They were not preserving relics. They were building a weapon, a creature torn from scripture and superstition, forced into flesh by science and sanctioned by the church. As I stared, the thing inside the cylinder shuddered. Its eyes opened, not wide, not for long, just a flicker. But I saw them, dark, endless, reflecting nothing but hunger. And in the hum of the machines, I heard it, a sound that was not sound, a whisper beneath my thoughts. Aaron Beckett, my name. I staggered back, heart pounding. None of the others reacted. The scientists adjusted dials. The priests murmured prayers. Only I had heard. The whisper came again, sharper, curling inside my skull. Aaron Beckett, you carry the blade. My fingers tightened on the dagger hidden beneath my jacket. Heat pulsed from it, searing even through cloth, as if it recognized the thing inside the glass. The creature's lips curled, not in speech, in a grin. I turned, nearly stumbling up the passage. My boots struck stone too loud. Too fast. I did not care. The whisper followed me all the way to the corridor above. By the time I reached my quarters, sweat drenched my back. My throat burned from whispered prayer. I slammed the door shut and collapsed against it. The dagger lay across my knees, still warm. In the silence, I heard it once more, faint but certain, a bleating cry, goat-like, rising from below, echoing through the stone, twisting into words no human tongue should form. It was awake. I could not let go of what I had seen inside the cylinder. The pale skin, the curling horns, the whisper that slid into my skull like a hook. I told myself it had been nerves, imagination, but the dagger at my side stayed warm through the night. Something beneath the Vatican wanted to be heard, and I had only caught the first syllable of its message. The next evening I moved through the lower halls again. Guards were fewer now, shifted away by sudden orders. Whole corridors were sealed with chains and keys we were never meant to touch. But old habits stayed with me. I knew how to walk where I was not wanted, my breath shallow, my boots careful. I slipped into a service passage that ran behind the vault. Pipes lined the walls, sweating with condensation. Every vibration traveled through them like a drum. I crouched behind a grate and looked through. They were gathered around a table lit by harsh white lamps. Priests in crimson robes, scientists in white coats. The smell of incense and chemicals clashed in the air. Victor Harlan stood at the center, hands folded neatly behind his back. Neural entrainment is stable, he said, calm as a man reading weather reports. The subject accepts signals at 40%. With stronger frequency, we can compel obedience. A younger voice asked, hesitant, and if the subject resists? Harlan did not blink. Then we adjust until resistance becomes compliance. Cardinal Marlowe answered next, his tone smooth as stone polished by centuries. Control is not optional. The world trembles with disorder. If the Church commands the terror, the Church commands the faithful. Stability is worth the cost. The younger man tried again, voice shaking. But what of God's law? Marlowe's reply was swift. God allows men to guide. We bind evil for good. History does not ask permission, only results. My stomach tightened. They were not speaking of salvation. They were speaking of power. Harlan gestured toward a glowing schematic projected on a screen. Lockdown patterns, cortical dampeners. Once tuned, thought itself bends. Imagine an army without fear, loyalty enforced by design. Marlowe folded his hands as if in prayer. We renew the oath as our fathers did. The pact remains. Without it, the world burns. With it, Rome stands. The words sank into me. A pact, an oath renewed. They had not stumbled on the creature by accident. They had chosen this path long ago. Harlan's voice hardened. When Phase 3 is complete, the model can be exported. Other powers will beg for what we hold. Obedience is a commodity, and we will set the price. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The priests bowed their heads. The scientists scribbled notes. Only I remained still, forehead pressed to cold metal, ears burning with words never meant for men like me. Then, beneath their voices, another rose. Not sound, but thought. A whisper through the pipes curling into my mind. You carry the blade. My hand clamped on the dagger beneath my jacket. Heat surged against my palm. I bit down on a gasp. No one else reacted. No one else heard. The whisper coiled again, sharper. You cannot hide. I felt the grin from the cylinder flash in my memory, that awful curl of lips neither human nor beast. I backed away, slow, careful, every muscle screaming to run. The pipes rattled with heat. My pulse thundered until I feared it would give me away. When I finally reached the corridor above, the air struck me like ice. I leaned against the wall, fighting the tremor in my hands. In the guardroom later, men played cards, laughter thin and forced. One glanced at me. "You're quiet tonight," he said. I forced a nod. Words would betray me. That night I lay awake, the dagger across my chest, whispering the prayer Matthias had taught me. Each word scraped my throat raw. The flame at my bedside guttered low, bending toward the floor as if bowing. Now I understood. The Vatican and its allies were not protecting the world from the demon. They were shaping it, binding it, teaching it to serve. And if they succeeded, no faith, no war, no soul would remain free. I could not stay silent. The whispers from the vault clung to my skull. The memory of horns and grins pressed on my chest like a weight I could not shake. I told myself I was only a guard, a hired body among stone and relics. But the dagger at my side hummed every time I walked near the sealed doors. It was as if the blade itself demanded I act. Silence, however, is the Vatican's greatest law. And silence is contagious. I needed voices that would not bow. The first I reached for was Lucas Grant. He had been with me once, years before, in deserts where the sun burned and bullets fell like rain. Lucas was steady where I was reckless, calm where I was restless. I still carried scars from nights when his hand had pulled me back from death's reach. I found him in a small cafe near the Tiber, far from the echo of bells. His hair was shorter now, streaked with gray, but his eyes still measured everything before him. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Feels worse," I answered. We sat in silence for a while, two men remembering old fields of dust and blood. Then I told him, not everything, but enough. The crates, the laboratory, the creature that knew me. Lucas listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as the story deepened. Finally he leaned back. "If half of that is true, we cannot ignore it." "I need help," I said. "Not questions, not doubt, just help." He nodded once. "Then you have it." Clara Briggs came next. She had never worn the same uniform as us, but she had marched her own wars with circuits and wires. In another life, she had been the one to keep our signals alive, our maps unbroken, our enemies visible. She lived now in a cluttered apartment above a repair shop, where machines older than both of us lined the walls. When I told her what I had seen, her eyes did not widen. They narrowed. "Control through neural feedback," she muttered, pacing the room. "Patterns imposed on the mind. That is not science. That is chains made of signals." I set the relic dagger on the table between us. The symbols along its blade shimmered faintly under the light. Clara stopped pacing. "That," she whispered, "does not belong in a laboratory." "No," I said, "but they have built one around it anyway." She exhaled, then shook her head. "You want me in?" "I need you in," I said. "I cannot fight machines with prayer alone." Her smile was thin but steady. "Then let us break their toys." But two allies were not enough. I needed bodies, boots, and eyes that knew how to move in dark places. Through old channels, I found three men. Not brothers in arms like Lucas, not loyal in faith like Clara, but professionals who bled for pay. The first was Mason Clark, a sniper whose silence could calm or chill a room. He said little, asked less, and carried his rifle like an extension of his spine. The second was Owen Price, a heavy gunner with arms like iron. He joked too much, laughed too loud, but behind the noise lived a man who loved the weight of fire. The last was Riley Shaw, once a medic in places that left no graves. His hands shook when he lit cigarettes, but in a fight, his instincts were quick. They did not ask why the Vatican needed breaking. They asked only what the pay was. I told them enough to spark fear, enough to keep them curious, but not the whole truth. The truth would have sent them running, and I needed their guns, even if their hearts would never stand firm. We met in a safe house by the river. Maps lay across the table, lines marking tunnels and service corridors I had traced in silence. Clara pointed out cameras, sensors, weak spots. Lucas checked every angle like a man measuring death's distance. The mercenaries leaned back, unimpressed. Owen cracked a grin. So we are ghosting into a basement. Easy coin. Mason said nothing, only watching me with eyes that measured trust like currency. Riley shifted, uneasy, his hand brushing the kit he never abandoned. I wanted to tell them more, about the eyes that opened in the tank, about the whisper that spoke my name, about the pact between priests and scientists. But I swallowed the words. Not yet. Not here. Instead, I said, "What waits below is not human. It will not care about your contracts. If you lose faith in this fight, you will not last a second." Owen laughed again, but it sounded thinner. Mason kept watching. Riley looked down. Clara's jaw tightened. Lucas placed a hand on the table, steady. Then we go in prepared, no matter what waits. That night, after they left, I sat alone with the dagger. I traced the etched symbols with trembling fingers. The blade pulsed faintly, alive, as if answering my touch. The prayer Matthias had given me rose again, carved into memory through repetition. I whispered it into the dark until the words bled together. We had maps, weapons, and a plan. But plans are brittle things. We needed more. We needed someone who knew the Vatican's underbelly better than stolen maps and whispered rumors, someone who could guide us through the hidden doors. That was when Caleb Frost arrived. I had not seen him since the war. Same lean frame, same grin that always looked half mischief, half warning. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp, carrying that old mix of confidence and danger. "You look worse than I expected," he said. "But you are still alive. That counts." Lucas crossed his arms, staring. "You trust him?" I hesitated. Caleb had once dragged me from fire when bullets fell like rain. Trust like that digs deep, but scars grow over it too. Still, I nodded. He knows the passages. If we are going below, he gets us there. Clara said nothing, her jaw tight. The mercenaries, Mason, Owen, and Riley, watched Caleb the way wolves watch another wolf join the pack. Caleb leaned over the table, tracing Clara's map with one finger. "Here. Service gate near the old catacombs. Guard shift every 20 minutes. Slip past, hug the wall, and you are inside without a sound." His confidence felt too smooth, but I wanted to believe. We moved at night. The streets of Rome slept, but the Vatican pulsed with silence too heavy to be holy. We crossed courtyards under moonlight, slipped through arches like shadows. At the gate Caleb had marked, 2 guards stood lazy with their lanterns dim. Caleb signaled. Lucas and I advanced. A quick strike, muffled breaths, and the guards fell into shadow. We pressed forward. The tunnel swallowed us whole, damp air clinging to our lungs. The deeper we went, the stronger the hum of unseen machines grew. And then the sound returned, the bleating cry, goat-like, echoing through the stone. Clara shivered. "That is no echo." Owen muttered, "Creepy as hell. But we are still getting paid." Riley's silence was louder than words. Caleb led with steady steps. Every lock opened too easily. Every turn came too smooth. Doubt gnawed at me, but hope is a dangerous thing. We reached a chamber lined with iron doors. Caleb stopped. "This is it," he said. "Beyond that wall lies the heart of it." Lucas frowned. "How the hell would you know?" Caleb's grin widened, sharper now. "Because I have been here before." The words froze me. A sudden clatter echoed behind. Lights blazed, doors slammed, armed men poured from the shadows, guards with rifles, scientists in black, priests in crimson. We were surrounded. I spun on Caleb, rage boiling in my throat. His grin had twisted into cruelty. "You never learned," he said softly. "Some wars end, some do not. This one pays better." The words cut deep. My chest burned. What the fuck, Caleb?" I spat, the sound tearing out of me before I could stop it. He only shrugged. "You fight for ghosts. I fight for the winning side." Lucas's fists clenched, his face red with fury. "Goddamn traitor!" His voice cracked like a whip. Owen shifted uneasily. Mason lowered his rifle. Riley's eyes darted to the exits. Fear crawled over their faces, stronger than loyalty. Then Cardinal Marlowe's voice rolled from the far side, calm and commanding. "You have brought them well, Caleb. Chains are best forged by those who believe they are free. Tonight, belief ends." Weapons rose around us. Lucas swore under his breath, ready to fight even with death pressing close. Clara's hands shook, but her eyes blazed, already calculating a way out that did not exist. The dagger beneath my jacket burned hot, urging me to draw it, urging me to speak the prayer Matthias had drilled into me. But rage held me still. The man who had once saved my life had delivered me into slaughter. The bleeding cry echoed again, deeper now, vibrating in the stone, mocking us all. And I understood. We had not been led into a fight. We had been led into a ritual. The chamber trembled under the weight of silence. Rifles aimed at us, crimson robes swayed in the stale air, and Caleb stood smug among the traitors. Marlowe lifted his hand, and the guards parted, clearing a path toward the far wall. The iron doors groaned open. What lay beyond was not a room, but a sanctum. Machines blinked, tubes hissed, and at the center towered the cylinder I had seen before. The liquid inside glowed faint, casting warped light across the faces of priests and scientists alike, and in that glow hung the thing. Its chest rose slowly, ribs like blades. Horns curled from its skull, sharp and black. Its eyes remained closed. But the sense of waiting filled the air like thunder before a storm. Dr. Harlan's voice rose with pride. "Tonight, obedience is perfected. Tonight, the subject is ours." Marlowe spread his arms as if blessing an altar. "This is not blasphemy. This is salvation," Lucas growled beside me, low and bitter. "Looks more like damnation." The scientists moved quickly, adjusting dials, feeding power into the chamber. The liquid churned, sparks spat from wires, a hum rose deeper and deeper until my bones rattled. Then the eyes opened. Black, endless, empty of mercy. The bleeding cry tore from its throat, but louder now. "Strong enough to shake the glass." The cylinder cracked. Panic flickered among the scientists. One shouted, "Pressure unstable!" Another tried to shut down the console, but the machine refused. The hum spiked higher, sharper. With a deafening crack, the cylinder shattered. Liquid surged across the floor. The creature stepped forward, free, its hooves striking stone like hammers. Chains coiled from the walls, but it snapped them as if they were threads. Baphomet was awake. The first to die were the scientists. The creature lunged, horns sweeping, bodies crushed against consoles. Blood sprayed across glowing screens. The priests chanted frantically, but their prayers broke into screams as claws tore through them. One guard fired. Bullets thudded into its chest, useless. The demon seized him by the throat and ripped him apart, flinging halves into the crowd. Chaos erupted. Men ran, slipping in blood and oil. The demon laughed, a sound half goat, half man, all hunger. I staggered back, shielding Clara as sparks rained from overhead. Lucas fired, but his rounds only slowed it. The mercenaries, Mason, Owen, Riley, froze, caught between terror and instinct. Caleb watched, calm, until the demon turned its head toward him. For the first time, his smile cracked. It spoke, voice guttural, layered with 100 echoes. You thought you held the chain. You thought you wrote the rules. Caleb stepped back. We can control you. The demon's grin split wider. Control is the lie you told yourselves. It surged forward, impaling him on a horn. His scream echoed once before he was tossed aside like refuse. My chest clenched. Betrayer or not, he had been flesh and blood once, a man who saved me once. Now he was nothing. Marlowe's voice rose above the carnage, desperate. Obey the oath! By the covenant you are bound! The demon turned on him. The covenant feeds me. The oath is mine, not yours. It swiped. Marlowe vanished beneath claws. Blood slicked the floor. Smoke curled from burning machines. Screams cut short as bodies fell. And then the demon's gaze turned toward us. The laughter stopped. Silence pressed down heavy. You, it said, voice coiling into my skull, the one with the blade, you carry what can wound me. The dagger seared at my side, almost burning through cloth. My hand shook as I gripped it. Lucas hissed, We need to move now. Clara's face was pale, but her eyes locked on mine. It knows you. It wants you. Mason, Owen, and Riley backed away, rifles trembling. Owen muttered, We cannot fight that. No pay is worth this. The demon stepped closer, hooves cracking stone, horns scraping the ceiling. Its breath smelled of smoke and blood. I swallowed hard, raising the dagger. My voice cracked with the words Matthias had taught me. By holy name, return to the pit. The demon laughed, louder than thunder. Your prayers are ash. Your courage is meat. Come closer, blade bearer. Let us finish the oath. The chamber was fire and ruin. Dead lay strewn in broken heaps. Machines sparked and screamed. And through it all, the demon came for us, step by step, unstoppable. The mercenaries broke first. Riley dropped his rifle and stumbled toward the shadows. Mason lowered his scope, backing away. Owen spat a curse and muttered, I am not dying for this. Their eyes met mine once, guilty and hollow, before they turned and moved toward the priests who still cowered, already choosing another master. Only Lucas, Clara, and I stood fast, 3 against a nightmare. The dagger burned, the prayer burned, and the knowledge that this fight was ours, whether we lived or died, burned most of all. The chamber was already a graveyard. Flames licked the broken consoles. Sparks showered across the floor slick with blood. The air reeked of smoke, oil, and death. And through it all, Baphomet stood unshaken, its horns glistening, its grin wide, black eyes locked on me. You, it said, voice layered and booming. Blade bearer, come closer. Let me taste the relic. The dagger burned at my side. My throat was raw with the urge to pray, but the words stuck. Lucas raised his rifle. Clara readied a small charge from her kit, and we stepped into a fight none of us could win. The demon moved first. A single stride carried it across the chamber. Claws sweeping. Lucas shoved me aside and fired point blank. The rounds punched into its chest, tearing chunks of flesh, but the wounds closed before my eyes. Baphomet roared, its laughter shaking the stone. Its hand struck, sending Lucas crashing into a pillar. The crack of bone echoed louder than gunfire. "Lucas!" I shouted, scrambling toward him. He staggered back to his feet, coughing blood, rifle bent in half. His eyes burned with the same fire I remembered from the war. "I am not done yet," he rasped. Clara darted forward, slamming her charge against the demon's leg. Sparks flared, the device hissed, and for a moment the monster faltered. Smoke rose from its skin where the blast seared. "Now!" Clara screamed. I rushed in, dagger raised, slicing across its arm. The blade tore through, black ichor spraying. The demon howled, staggering back, but its eyes widened, not in pain but in delight. "Yes," it hissed, "that blade, that prayer. I have waited for you." It moved faster than thought. One claw swept low, striking Clara. She flew across the chamber, her body crashing into twisted metal. I heard the air leave her lungs in one terrible gasp. I stumbled to her side, dropping to my knees. Blood streaked her lips. Her hands groped for mine, shaking. "End it," she whispered. "Do not let them use it." Her eyes dimmed before I could answer. Rage burned hotter than fear. I rose, dagger glowing faint in my hand, facing the beast as it turned back toward Lucas. My old friend stood again, broken but defiant. He drew a sidearm with one hand, a combat knife with the other. "Over here, you son of a bitch!" he shouted, voice raw with fury. The demon charged. Lucas met it head-on, firing until the slide locked back, then slashing wildly with steel. The monster's claws caught him, lifting him into the air. Lucas met my eyes one last time. "Finish it," he growled. Then the claws ripped through him and his body fell limp, blood raining onto the stones. I screamed until my throat tore. Only I remained. The mercenaries had fled or bowed. Clara was gone. Lucas was gone. The chamber shook with the demon's laughter. It dropped Lucas's body like refuse and stepped toward me. "You are alone," it said. "Your blade is nothing. Your prayer is ash. Kneel, and I will let you live long enough to see the world chained." I raised the dagger, hands trembling, sweat blinding my eyes. My voice broke, but the prayer forced itself free. Each word was jagged, torn, but each burned the air like fire. The demon snarled, stepping closer, claws raised. I swung with everything left in me. The dagger slashed across its face, carving deep, leaving a scar that smoked. The beast roared, stumbling back, fury shaking the room. But my strength was failing. My arms were lead, my legs buckled. It loomed above me, horns scraping the ceiling, black blood dripping from its wounds. "Alone," it whispered, "broken. Mine." I sank to my knees, dagger slipping in my hand. The chamber spun, fire and smoke swallowing the edges of sight, but somewhere in the roar of death I heard Matthias's voice echoing from memory. "There will come a moment when the blade must strike true, when prayer must be more than words." I gripped the dagger tighter, forcing myself to my feet. The demon grinned, stepping closer for the kill, and I knew the last stand had begun. The chamber was fire and ruin. Smoke curled from shattered machines, flames licked stone black, and bodies lay broken across the floor. My chest heaved, my blood hot in my throat. The dagger trembled in my hand, its glow fading with each heartbeat. Baphomet loomed above me, wounded but unbroken. Black ichor dripped from scars I had carved, yet its grin only widened. Its voice slid into my mind like a knife. "You bleed, you falter, you are mine." It struck. Claws hammered my chest, throwing me across the ground. My back hit stone hard, the air driven out of me. The dagger slipped from my hand, skidding across the floor. I lay still. My chest rose shallow, ragged. Blood trickled from my lips. I forced my body limp, every instinct screaming to move. The demon's laughter rolled heavy. It leaned close, its breath hot with smoke and blood. "So ends the blade bearer. So ends defiance." It stepped closer. Hooves cracked stone. Claws reached down, eager to tear me apart. I waited. Closer, closer. Now. I surged up, throwing myself against it with the last of my strength. My arms locked around its neck. My legs braced against its chest. The suddenness staggered it. Its roar shook the walls. I seized the dagger with one hand, its heat burning into my skin. My voice burst out, hoarse but steady. The words Father Matthias had forced into my bones. "I cast you out in the name of God. Unclean spirit, depart now." The prayer rang louder than fire, louder than screams. Each word burned the air like a brand. The demon shrieked, thrashing wildly. Its claws raked my back, slamming me into stone. But I held on, teeth clenched, dagger raised high. Light blazed across the etched symbols. I brought the blade down straight into its skull. For one heartbeat, silence. Then an eruption of fire. White light burst from the wound, splitting horn and bone. The roar shook the earth itself. Its limbs flailed, tearing chunks from the walls. I screamed the last command, my throat ripping with it. "By the holy name, fall!" The creature's eyes burst into fountains of black flame. Its horns cracked, shattering down the middle. The chamber shook as the ceiling split. It collapsed to its knees, convulsing. The dagger blazed like a star, devouring it from within. Black ichor boiled, rising as smoke. Its final words hissed through my skull, broken and fading. "You cannot kill what is eternal." I drove the dagger deeper. "Then I will bury you." The light swallowed everything. When sight returned, I was sprawled across the floor, lungs heaving, body broken. The dagger still glowed faintly in my grip, its fire dying slowly. Baphomet lay crumbling, its massive frame collapsed into ash and smoke, its horns splintered, its grin erased. The ground shook violently. Stone rained down. The entire vault was collapsing. I staggered toward the tunnel, dragging myself step by step. My legs buckled, my arms shook. Behind me, the remains of the demon dissolved into shadow. The flames swallowed the chamber whole. The ceiling split with a final crack. Dust and stone roared down, and darkness took me. Light returned as pain. Not fire, not smoke, but the steady glare of fluorescent lamps. The world smelled of antiseptic and linen. The beeping of a monitor tapped against my skull. I opened my eyes, white walls, a ceiling fan turning slow. My throat felt raw, every breath shallow. A nurse leaned over me. "You are awake." Her voice was soft, rehearsed. "Do not move too quickly." I tried to sit, but my body refused. I looked down. The blanket ended too soon. Where my legs should have been, there was nothing. Cold spread through me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The nurse placed a hand on my arm. "You survived a collapse. You are lucky to be alive." Lucky. Hours blurred. Doctors came, voices clinical and clipped. Severe crush injuries. Emergency amputation. Patient stabilized. Each phrase stripped more of me away. Finally, a man in black entered. Not a doctor, not a nurse. His collar told me he was clergy. His ring glimmered as he folded his hands. "You endured much," he said, his tone grave yet smooth. "The archives suffered a structural failure. Many were lost. You alone survived." His eyes did not waver, neither did mine. We both knew he was lying. "There will be no burden for you," he continued. "The church will cover your care. You will want for nothing, nothing but the truth." I tried to speak. My voice cracked. "The demon." He silenced me with a raised hand. There was no demon, only stone, fire, and collapse. Rest, forget, that is God's mercy. He turned and left. The door clicked shut behind him. Days passed. My body healed, but my mind refused. Each night I dreamed of horns splitting the dark. I felt the dagger burn again in my hand, though the relic was gone. I heard the roar, the laughter, the voice. Sometimes it was faint, a whisper at the edge of sleep. Sometimes it was close, pressed against my ear. "You buried me, but the ground still breathes." I would wake drenched in sweat, heart hammering, phantom pain lancing where my legs had been. Lucas was gone. Clara was gone. The mercenaries vanished into silence, their names scrubbed from any record. Caleb's betrayal died in rubble. The official report was short. Structural failure in restricted section. Casualties total. Survivor 1 guard, unnamed in public record. Unnamed, as if I had never existed. The Vatican bells tolled outside my window each morning. The sound once meant faith. Now it felt like chains. One evening, Father Matthias appeared, older, thinner, his eyes heavier than ever. He sat at my bedside in silence for a long time before speaking. "You lived," he said. "Not all of me," I answered. He nodded slowly, looking at the blanket that hid the absence below. "The relic did its work. But power always takes more than it gives." I stared at him, my throat burning. "It is gone. The dagger, the prayer, everything." Matthias shook his head. "Not everything. You carry the scar. That is proof enough." His gaze fixed on me, sharp. "And you carry memory. Never let them take that." That night after he left, I lay staring at the ceiling. The fan turned slow. The monitor beeped steady, and then, faint, soft, almost playful. I heard it, a bleating cry. Goat-like, it echoed in the room, though no one else stirred. I shut my eyes tight, whispering the prayer until my throat cracked. But the sound did not fade. It laughed, low, mocking, patient. The world believed the Vatican had suffered a collapse. The world believed I was a victim of rubble. Only I knew the truth, and the truth still breathed.